Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has made a few important statements with reference to the standoff between Indian and Chinese troops in the Galwan area, which has led to deaths of our soldiers and Chinese soldiers and many more injured. So the Prime Minister needed to come out and set the record straight. And what he has said is essentially three things. One is that there is no intruder present in the Indian side or any Indian post that has been taken up. At the same time, he has also further assured that the Indian troops took the fight back to the Chinese. Now, all this is essentially correct, but it doesn't clear up the doubts which exist with regard to what is the Indian side, what is the Chinese territory that the Chinese are claiming. Now, China's Prime Minister Zhou Enlai in 1959 had written to Pandit Nehru to say that China was laying claims to parts of what we regard as Eastern Ladakh and largely on the Aksai Chin Plateau. And that was the first time the word line of actual control had been used in official correspondences. You know, traditionally, we have all grown up in India to look at the map of India with all of Jammu and Kashmir as very much in the beautiful map and boundaries of India. But this is the boundary line that is what India asserts are its territories. But if you pick up any international mapping, then there are 2-3 parts of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir that show very clearly divided between Pakistan on the west, largely India in the center, and China on the east, where right now the conflict is taking place. Now, let's look at just the eastern part, where China occupies anything from 22 to 25% upwards of the original old territories of Jammu and Kashmir. And this was really the start of the disagreements, because in 1865, the British, when they were mapping all of India, there was an Anglo-Indian cartographer who was given the responsibility to map the boundaries of Ladakh. Ladakh didn't have a formal boundary with Tibet then, because China was very far away. There was a large entity, Tibet, which was an independent entity. So Mr. Johnson did mark the boundary, but historical evidence shows that Mr. Johnson was encouraged by the then Maharaja of Kashmir to say that extend the boundaries as far eastwards as you can, because the Maharaja was an ambitious man and wanted to have more and more territory with him. Likewise, the Maharaja's territories were extended north of Kargil to what Pakistan now occupies, the POK area of Gilgit-Baltistan. The original map of Jammu and Kashmir had all these territories as part of the Maharaja's fiefdom. Let's go back to Aksai Chin. Johnson drew a line along what are known as the Kunlun ranges. The Kunlun ranges are on the further east of Ladakh, on the boundary of Ladakh with Tibet and close to Xinjiang, the two areas that China is very sensitive about. And that is the Kunlun range line that appears in almost all maps that we see in India of Jammu and Kashmir, erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir, and the territories belonging to the Union of India after independence. The Chinese came a little eastwards of that, and they started skirting that and coming close to what is called another set of ranges called Laksang range. Now that's where they were all at till India and China went into a conflict. And the 62 conflict, they came closer up towards Ladakh. And at that point of time during the conflict, they occupied most of the Galwan area where the fighting is taking place now. But India held its own. Technically, that area never went to China. And they came to the boundaries of the Pangong Tso Lake. So that is roughly where subsequent talks and negotiations rested, with the line of actual control becoming common parlance from 1993 till 2013. All the agreements we've had with the Chinese, this talks about it. There are areas all along in this Aksai Chin and west of Aksai Chin bordering Ladakh that were not physically occupied by either side, because not every hillock, not every peak can you occupy, not every inch of ground can be occupied. So what troops normally do is they occupy important military places which give them a defensive capability, and the rest of the area they patrol. The fighting now is about Galwan River and the adjoining areas, so-called Galwan Valley. Now that area was not physically occupied by us, but it was with us in our control even after the 62 conflict. And the Chinese would also come there, but there were certain areas we patrolled, the certain areas they patrolled. Likewise, next to Pangong Tso Lake, which has two sides of its boundary, the eastern boundary and the northern boundary of Pangong Tso falls into areas that China claims and controls, which it has controlled after 1962. But there are boundaries and parts of that, particularly what is called Finger 4. Finger is a long ridge line or spur. The military calls it Finger. So there from Finger 4, people used to go patrolling till Finger 8. Now the Chinese have set up tents, lookout posts, and reinforced them, and they're not letting you come in there. And that is why they have started making claims about it openly, with Chinese prime ministers, spokespersons, and others saying that China has always claimed Galwan. They have on and off, but there was never a settlement. I mean, we can claim all of Tibet, but there is no settlement over it, so we can't say it belongs to us. The LOC was marked point by point by two generals after the 71 war called the Suchetgarh Agreement, and therefore when Musharraf and gang intruded in Kargil, they had to go back because we had an agreed document which they had disputed and flouted, and the world accepted our position that the LOC was marked out, so it is a de facto boundary of Jammu and Kashmir vis-a-vis Pakistan. The Prime Minister's statement, they've not intruded into Indian territory, to some extent is right. They haven't come into Ladakh plains, that is Indian territory. But the territory that we claim in this disputed area and they claim into this disputed area has no clear, agreed, defined boundary. So to some extent his statement is correct, but not entirely, because that boundary still needs to be defined, and that's what constantly the fighting between India and China in that area takes place about.